Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today I'm playing my most played tank of all time in World of Tanks, and no, it's not the Comet due to popular belief I guess, it's actually the M48A5, although I'm sure I'm going to cock it up and I'm gonna miss the designation of this tank. Wargaming recently buffed the turret armor a lot, they changed the whole look of the vehicle, and accordingly it's no longer called the M48A1 Patton, it is the A5 variant, so if I do mess that up, let's see if I can get through an entire video like that. So, I've talked about this a lot in the past as to why this is my most played tank of all time. It's a combination of the side armor, which you can actually side scrape quite well in this vehicle and pull off some miracle bounces, and even at the front of the hull. Unlike some other vehicles where I feel that you can't just wiggle around and just pray and hope that you're going to be able to bounce that extra shell to be able to put in that extra shot. It's rather exciting to play from that tank to play from that perspective. It's also got the best view range in the game at 420 meters. It's got 105mm that now has a decent rate of fire. Once again, well, that's about a couple of years ago since they made it a decent rate of fire. And it's got incredible turret reverse dispersion and kind of middly accuracy. It's just a great all-rounder, and I like my jack of all trades tanks, and I feel this is one of the more heavy-hitting jack-of-all-trades vehicles. But this video is not going to be focused on my love of the M48A1 Patton, nor is it really going to be focused on how it performs admirably in the situations that I'm going to put it into. Today's video is going to focus on what happens when you just get thrown into these god-awful scenarios where the majority of your team are, shall we say, still learning, inexperienced players, and just look at this. Look at the enemy team on here, all green, all purple, apart from a couple of happy strawberries on the enemy team. So in these kind of scenarios, you really do have to dig deep. Now, how do I feel when you're in this kind of a situation is your best way to be able to influence the battle enough to win? Because that's really what it comes down to in World of Tanks. If you want to win the battle, it's up to you to influence the battle. Now sure, you can influence the battle by working with your team, and I'm not saying that it's you versus 29, it's you and 14 players against 15. But obviously if you can be more impactful than any of the individual players on the enemy team, then that's how you increase your win ratio above the 48% average or 50% average if you look at it like that. Now in these kind of games when you're a top tier tank and you know that arguably your team is not as experienced as the enemy team, then it's really up to you to have a high impact. And so how can you have a high impact when you're a top tier vehicle? Well, evidently it's to look at the kind of tanks that you think are going to be able to waltz their way through your team. So for example, the heavy hitters like the E75, the FV215B and the E50M, if they go against things like a T69 or a T32 by themselves, they're not going to receive any damage. The E50M can easily waltz its way through a T69 or T32. Oh, nice shot there into the top of that T54E1 turret. And so what you really want to do is you want to try and focus on the tanks that you feel are going to be able to obliterate your team and take it upon yourself to, I guess, trade your health as effectively as you can. So far I've put in 3,000 damage, I've done 1,000 spotting, we've nearly got the FV taken out, we've got their E50M down to half hit points. If I can get these two vehicles out, then those are all of their tier 10 tanks taken care of, and all there will be left is a self-propelled gun. Great shot there by the M40, M43 artillery working with me well now along this ridgeline. And now I know that obviously the E50M's got a very weak rate of fire down there. I can come round, poach a shot, he fires at one of my friends, and there you go. Because we've been supporting our tier rates, they're actually being really useful right now. They've got in, they're distracting the E50M, and the E50M, it might be great in those 1 versus 1 fights for a controlled engagement. But when it comes down to those 1 versus 3s or 1 versus 2s, when you're outnumbered, the E50M's DPM really lets it down. So that's how we've been able to get through that scenario. So now I'm going to leave those 2 tier 8s and the IS-7 along the western flank, and I really don't want the enemy team to push in and put pressure on my tank destroyers in the base. That's what I was thinking right now. And also, artillery are doing a blooming good job, right? Sure, I'm up to, what, nearly 6,000 combined in the first 4.5 minutes of this game, and that's something that, yeah, just over 6,000 now. Did I say 6.5? I meant 6. Whoops. Yeah, and that's a good impact for 4.5 minutes in. We've been almost continuously firing, trying to spot for those artillery. This position is very, very strong if the enemy are aggressive. But those artillery have been super effective, so the last thing that I would want is for the medium tanks to be able to sneak in and to be able to get them. So that's why I fell back there to put some pressure up, and then once I saw that the T-69 and the T-32 was struggling again, I came back to try and help that platoon. But you know what? They've had the impact that they needed to. Having dealt with the E50M, I come round the corner, put one into the lower plate of the Panther 88, and that was a scenario where I knew with his 240 alpha damage that he wasn't going to shut me down. In fact, look, he rolled exceptionally high there at 282, and I've still got 34 hit points left. I don't think it was actually possible for him to roll above 300, right? Because a quarter on 240 is going to be 60, and that's 300. Yeah, that would be the max roll. So as I came round there, I knew that I would be safe. Well, I felt that I'd be safe. Maybe I didn't quantify it in my head or calculate it at the time. But you know, once you can take a shot, if you can take a vehicle out of the game, and we bounced a couple of shells from the Panther 88 early, to all intents and purposes, maybe we'll be able to ricochet another. So now this game is still neck and neck, even though we are up to 5,500 damage, 1,300 spotting, and I feel like we've definitely pulled our weight so far, but the job is still not done. It's neck and neck. So right now I'm trying to use the line on the minimap to figure out where that Jagdtiger is and see if I can get shots into him. He does appear there, but I believe he's behind the cover. I'm not going to be able to get him, and so what I'm thinking about doing is making my way around to this location here, and if I can get along this line, then I'll be able to maybe sneak some shots through those rocks. Are we going to be able to do it? Not 100% certain. Oh no, the Jagdtiger disappears. You see that I align my line on the minimap to try and figure out where he is, and then I'm going to ping the map and I'm going to ask for help from my team. I'm trying to suggest to them that if they spot them, then I can catch one of the more dangerous vehicles left on the enemy team right out in the open and shut him down. So now I'm going to use the line on my minimap again to try and find the Su-12254, but in retrospect, looking at this, I really don't think that was a good idea to fire there. He's surrounded by a Stridsvagn S1, a T-54. When you're firing blind like that, you might hit your team just as much as you're going to hit your enemy there, and so I think that was a rather reckless play by me, and if I could go back I wouldn't have done that. But my blind shots at the Jagdtiger, they're perfectly fine. Once again, I ping the map, and it looks like our artillery are communicating as to where they can see as well. Good artillery play there. How long is that going to flash on the minimap? Maybe some kind of bug? Well, maybe that's going to last forever. Who knows? Anyway, so I'm unable to spot the Jagdtiger there, so I feel that I need to come back, because obviously maximum spotting distance in World of Tanks 445 meters, no point in hanging back that far, otherwise we're not going to be able to spot him myself, and I just didn't have faith that the S1 was going to be able to spot him, but it looks like I'm in the wrong place at the wrong time once again, and in fact I could have been able to shoot the Jagdtiger as the S1 spotted him, and you can see my frustration here. I'm thinking, should I go back because they are actually going to spot the Jagdtiger? So a little bit of faffing at this stage of the game. Now, sure, I guess if maybe the enemy team had been more aggressive, this faffing that I did here in the middle might have lost us the round. But then again, when you're on 34 hit points, you kind of have to be the supporting vehicle, and I think it's up to your more heavy vehicles or vehicles that have got armor or vehicles that have got hit points. Okay, talking about hit points, the IS-7 only has one left. Wow. He is... Oh, there you go. I was saying he's hanging on by a whisker, but it looks like his whisker is gone now. Looks like he lost his 9th life if he's some kind of cat. Nevertheless, he did a good job there by flushing out 2 tanks. We know where both the Su-101s are. They're working in a platoon, and they got 4 kills, or one of them's got 4 kills. The other one's still dangerous, so I put a shot into him, and now I figure out I do not want to stay there, because we saw that one Su-101 was making his way along this ridgeline. So you see that I ping the map, I tell the artillery where I think the tank destroyer will be, and I ask for help. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to swing my tank round here, I ask for help again, and I ping where he's going to be, and I ask the T-54 to come over along with me. Now the worst thing that I could have done was to be sitting in that dip when an Su-101 comes over the ridgeline, and all he has to do is he has to ram me or just put one shot in, or the artillery will splash me, and then I'm out the game, and then I can't control it, and then I put it in the hands of the judges, so to say. Instead, I'm no longer there. I pull back, I get a shot into the Su-101, and I think about going and getting another hit into him, but I'm not going to do that. I think he was using the high alpha damage gun on that tank, so he's got a pretty long reload, but, you know, why bother, right? Why risk my hit points? The T-54 and the Conqueror gun carriage do the job for me. Good teamwork there. And now we are starting to have a serious result. 6,600 damage and 1,800 spotting. It's not really about the damage. It's not really about the spotting here. It's more about working with your team, looking on the map, making sure that you're kind of working each stage of the game. At the beginning, I felt like I wanted to take my chances. I wanted to try and use the turret armor on this vehicle to eliminate the most dangerous tanks on the enemy team. It's not about their statistics, even though they do have good statistics. If you don't use statistics at all, you would still want to take out the 2 tier 10s on the enemy team because they're the more dangerous tanks, right? They're the ones that are going to obliterate your tier 8s. They're the ones that are going to cut through the entirety of a flank without taking damage. However, if I whittle them down, then I feel that my team will have more chance against the other vehicles. Now, in retrospect here, I wish I'd loaded a high explosive round because I don't think the Lorraine 155-51 knew that he was spotted in the open there. And if I'd loaded a high explosive round and shot his superstructure, so to say, even the rather low 58mm of penetration would have been able to likely go through it, and 480 is a lot more likely to kill the Lorraine than 390 is, although I guess I lost my coin flip right. Anyway, the Lorraine 155-51 pulls back, and my T-54 shuts down a vehicle. Oh, there's the Lorraine 155. He's on 19 hit points. Snap into the top. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull back because evidently the GWE 100 has me spotted and he's likely to splash me. And it's just about being, I guess, safe at the end of the game. Is this the most necessary play? Well, probably not. Is it the one that's going to keep me alive and be the right thing to do? If the game was a little bit closer, well, sure. And with 3 minutes left, maybe the artillery tries to run away and then the T-54 can't cap in the encounter, and then we get some kind of a horrific draw, which would be an absolute disaster result. But in fact, there's the GWE 100. We put one shot into him, we reverse, we go forwards, and wow. Did you see where that shell just landed? It landed right there, and I didn't even think that he was aiming at that location on my screen. He was pointing his tank over here. Oh, wait a minute, where's his gun? So he's pointing his gun there, yet the shell seems to go there? Okay, well, I guess maybe that's some kind of server reticle issue. But, bit of a heartbreak at the end. We don't quite manage to shoot him again. Maybe we would have got over to 10,000 combined there. That would have been a result. Nevertheless, this was a cracking round in which we really had to dig deep to take down the victory. So this was an ace tanker for our M48, unsurprisingly so. For 1,381 base experience points, we get a high caliber for 7,436 damage dealt with 2,000 damage upon detecting. I'd like to give a massive shout out to the 2 artillery on my team, Sovli and to Neo Magnet. I definitely couldn't have got through this game without you. And we certainly had a good supporting role for our team here as we get a Confederate medal, as we dealt damage to at least 6 tanks that were subsequently killed by our team. And in fact, it was more like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Well, that's 1.5 Confederate medals as far as I'm concerned. And also because we didn't fire too many premium rounds here, we make 85,000 credits profit, although we were using a reserve at the time. So if we take that 51k off, then we still make 34, not too shabby. And so what I really want you to take home from this video is that you don't have to have XVM to snipe the most important tanks on the enemy team. And this is especially important when you're one of only 3 top tier vehicles in a +2 matchup, and especially so when one of those 3 top tier vehicles is a self-propelled gun, and so there are only 2 top tier tanks. Then one of your best strategies can be trying to eliminate them early on, taking as little damage as possible, which will not only allow you to have an easier time against the mid and lower tiered opponents, but it will allow some of the lower tiered vehicles on your team to flourish as well. Now, I'm not even going to try and suggest this is going to work all the time, but think of it like this: the difference between a player who wins 55% of their games and somebody who wins 50% of their games is that the player who wins 55% of their games is winning only 5% out of 50% of the losses. And so they only have to change 10% of their losses into wins to be considered a great player who is statistically strong at carrying their battles. And to visualize it in a different way, I've made this terrible diagram. Let me just explain it to you quickly. Here is 0% win ratio and here is 100%, okay? So now I'm suggesting that even if you go AFK in all of your games, you're probably going to end up with about 40% win ratio. And that's because in 40% of the games, the other 14 players on your team will be good enough to be able to carry you, even if you do absolutely nothing. However, I feel that even if you are the god of World of Tanks, there are still going to be about 1 in 4 games, or 25%, that you just can't possibly win, because unfortunately you can't really win 1 versus 15 at least every time. And that leaves this very important area in between of 35% of games that I feel that, depending on how well you play, could result in either your team winning or your team losing. And effectively that comes down to a lot of things, but in the end it's how well you can influence the battle, and generally that boils down to player skill and knowledge. And so for any of you out there who are trying to work on your win ratio, I would like to highlight a couple of things. Number 1, try not to get frustrated and be objective when you're in one of these "you're gonna lose anyway" kind of games. I'm not saying you shouldn't try. Try it. See if you can learn from it. Try and look to see what your team are doing wrong. Try and look to see what the enemy team are doing right. But don't allow these 25% of games to frustrate you to the point where you're tilted and you're no longer to do well in your 35% of games. And also understand that it's probably only 1 in 3 games where you're actually going to matter. And it's important to recognize these games. I'm not saying you have to recognize them in the first 30 seconds. Sometimes you'll only recognize it after the battle, and you'll figure out that, oh, I made a mistake here. If I'd done this, or I'd worked with this player in this position, then we could have probably won this one. And it's recognizing this and reviewing those moments, both critically but also constructively, that's really going to absolutely springboard your learning, and if you care about it, your impact in World of Tanks. But in the end, does any of this really matter? I don't really think it does. As long as you're having fun, then I think you're always winning. Well, at least figuratively speaking. And so that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this video, and maybe you found some of these kind of midnight ramblings useful. If you did, give this video a thumbs up, and if you didn't, give it a thumbs down, and let me know in the comments if you think I'm full of poop and what I just explained doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.